right, I'm Joey Padilla. I'm here with Dave Goucher. He's been a sports broadcaster since the 90s and more recently broadcaster announcer for the Golden Knights. How you doing?
Joey, I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm good. So how'd you get your start as a sportscaster?
Oh God, well, as you said, it's been a long time. I went to Boston University. I grew up in Rhode Island, where I'm sitting as we talk right now. And I went to Boston University and majored in broadcast journalism, and actually ended up doing something with that major. My last 2 years of school, I did BU hockey, football, and baseball on the student radio station. I always say nobody really listened, nobody cared, but that's okay. You had to start somewhere. And that was the start for me. And then professionally, I spent 7 years in the minor leagues. So I was 2 years in Wheeling, West Virginia, with the Wheeling Thunderbirds at the time, now the Wheeling Nailers. As I mentioned, I grew up in Rhode Island. I did the Providence Bruins games for 5 years, the farm team for the Boston Bruins. And then 17 years with the Bruins on radio in the NHL. So by the time, as you mentioned, the Golden Knights job, hard to believe 8 years ago now almost, I had kind of been thinking about making the move to television. I was hoping I could, but it was going to take the right opportunity, to be honest with you. But, Vegas, first ever team, first ever major league team, and the move to television, it was, one of those that was almost too good. Well, it was, too good to pass up.
Definitely. So you've done mostly hockey, right?
Right, right,
So,
right, right.
so what about hockey gained your main interest over the other sports?
Good question, Joey. I played it as a kid, right? So especially in New England, hockey's enormously popular, and it's been so great to see it grow by leaps and bounds in Nevada and in Vegas over the last, in the Golden Knights time over the last 8+ years. From the time I was about five, I guess, through high school, prep school, and then at BU, tried to play a little JV hockey, and they didn't need me.
Hmm.
They were fine without me. So it was always my favorite sport. I played hockey and baseball and tennis when as a kid, but hockey was the one I always kind of enjoyed the most. So I think when it came time to make a decision as to which one would you like to try to get a job in broadcasting, hockey was the obvious choice. I enjoy it the most. I like the fact, Joey, that it's 8 months, and I like that, I'm very blessed. I get the summers to kind of, recharge a bit, if you will. Hockey was always at the top of my list, and I was, fortunate enough to be able to get a job broadcasting it.
Do you feel like the culture around sportscasting has changed over the last 3 decades? Have you seen anything change or like the methods with it change at all?
Uh, yeah, I think what's changed a little bit, I don't know what's the best way to phrase it. There used to be steps you had to take, and I guess you still do. And like I said, I spent 7 years between the East Coast Hockey League and the American Hockey League. You used to have to really earn it. And I think some of that's got lost in the shuffle here over the last 5, 10 years.
Mhm.
At least in my opinion, where I look at some people that get, for lack of a better description, certain jobs in broadcasting, and you just kind of shake your head a little bit. It's just how the business has gone. I'm not convinced it's a change for the better. I think that when you almost if you skip some rungs on that ladder as you're climbing your way up, I'm not convinced that's a good thing. I think the old, what's the phrase? The toothpaste is out of the tube a little bit here. I don't think you're putting it back in again. But that's okay. I've been at it for my goodness, 25 years in the NHL and 32 years professionally. And I focus on, I love my job with the Golden Knights. We have a lot of fun. Shane Natty and I, who do our games together, we have a blast with the broadcast. And, I feel fortunate that I've been able to, be there since day one. That was one of the major thing that attracted me to that was to kind of get in on the ground floor, never thinking it would ever be
Yeah.
what it's turned out to be so quickly.
Yeah. What was that like? Tell me about how you got that job and just how it was in the very beginning with that team.
As I say, I had done the Bruins on radio a long time. Basically, my main boss now with the Golden Knights is a fellow by the name of Eric Tosi. And Tos was the media relations director for the Bruins, for the Boston Bruins. He left to be the vice president of communications with the Golden Knights. But he left, like, my memory is, Joey, like in November or December of 2016, like before, because they had nothing in Vegas. They had to
Mhm.
hire staff. There was nothing, and we had kind of chatted a couple of times before he left. I had done some television for NBCSN. I had done a package of college hockey games in the Northeast. That was kind of in the back of my mind, was if there's an opportunity to make the move to TV, I'd like to try and do it. I always joke around though, nobody else was thinking that. Like
Mhm.
it wasn't like they were kicking the doors down to try to hire me. But anyway, Eric and I had a couple of good chats before he left to go to Vegas, and I said, just keep me in mind. No guarantees because
Mhm.
it was enormously competitive. The jobs that Shane and I ended up landing, there was a lot of people that wanted those jobs. But anyway, that was kind of my, I guess, inroads towards it. A lot of people, understandably so, wanted our jobs, but I was fortunate enough to be able
Mhm.
to land it. I mean, it was, professionally, it was kind of a no-brainer, even though I love doing the Bruins on radio and had a chance to, call some big games for them especially in the playoffs. But the move to television, it's kind of, what's the next step in your career? That was kind of where I was headed with it, back 8 years ago.
Was it a easy transition to TV, or was it a little bit nerve-wracking at first?
Well, it's a little bit, it was a little nerve-wracking. I
Mhm.
wouldn't say it was like I had done some television, but I wouldn't say I had done a lot. I'll tell you a quick funny story. The first game we did was an exhibition game in Vancouver, had to be mid-September of 2017. During the preseason, you just fly up day of the game. Usually regular season, you fly up the day before, you're there the night before. But in the preseason, you just fly up and do the game and fly back.
Mhm.
So we flew up to Vancouver, landed, and Shane and I had never sat next to each other in a booth. I mean, he had played for the Bruins, he had played for a few teams, and he was broadcasting in Winnipeg
Mhm.
before he came to Vegas. So, but you never know how it's going to go. I remember we were coming on for our open for our first preseason game. Not to get too technical, but you have like an IFB, like a thing in your ear, like an
Yeah,
earpiece thing that, um,
totally.
and mine had become and we've gone away from it now. We just do headsets all the time because it's so loud, especially at T-Mobile. You can't hear with just the IFB. And
Yeah, it's too loud.
this game in Vancouver, mine had come unplugged, unbeknownst to me, like there's a little box you have on your belt.
Mhm.
So I couldn't hear our producer at all, like starting to count us in the 10, 9, 8. I just
Mhm.
knew we were getting close, and I was trying to like verbally say to the guy working our camera, I can't hear him. And God love him, he snuck behind me right before we were coming on, and he just clicked it back in.
That's
So
clutch.
that was
Wow.
so anyway, that was nerve-wracking, the first one. But then once we did that, but I did have a fair amount to learn, Joey. I would say, like, it's a much different medium. I had a
100%.
friend of mine say to me once that, in radio, you've got a pretty small band. It's you and your partner and your producer in the booth, and maybe the guy back at the radio station, punching the buttons to hit the commercials.
Mhm.
TV's a lot different, producer, director, graphics, replay, statisticians, camera operators, stage managers. There's a lot to it. So it's a much bigger band. But I wanted that though. I felt like I had kind of, for lack of a better phrase, it kind of maxed out. I did 24 years of radio is a long time, and I enjoyed it. But if there was going to be an opportunity to maybe make a change,
Do something
that
bigger.
was, yeah, yeah. You want to kind of try to continue to grow, and that was, that's what I wanted to do.
So how would you describe the energy of the fan base of the Golden Knights? Because I've been to a few games and it's pretty crazy. The energy is always up, and you can definitely feel it in the city whenever they're here. How would you describe that in your experience with that?
Yeah, I would agree with you. It's off the charts, Joe. And I
Mhm.
have been lucky enough to go to all the arenas in the league here for a good while. There's nothing like it in the NHL. There's other cities that have great atmosphere. I mean, my old stomping grounds in Boston, that building can get rocking really good. Montreal, the Canadians, that building can get really loud. Nashville, when they have a good team. What I love about it in Vegas is that it's kind of the same. If it's a Tuesday against Carolina, or it's a Saturday against Edmonton, it's always rocking, and
Mhm.
that's what I like about it. It is a show, and I think that the Golden Knights were smart, especially our entertainment department and our game presentation department. I always say this, they put a team in Vegas. They didn't put a team in Kansas, you
Mhm.
know. They play to that. It is a show, but knowing that the overwhelming majority of our season ticket holders are local residents, from
Mhm.
Summerlin, Henderson, where somewhere in the valley.
Yeah.
And I do think they forced other teams. I've never done a scientific study on this, but I think they forced other teams to ratchet up their game night presentation too, because it is a night out for people, right? It's not,
Yeah.
and and in most cities, and Vegas is no exception, it can be a pretty expensive night out. That's
Mhm.
kind of the way it is these days.
Mhm.
So I think they were cognizant from the beginning it's got to be a lot more, although the product on the ice has been really good for 8 years. They were cognizant of making it bigger than that. And it's more than just who wins and loses the game. They want it to be an enjoyable night out, and and they've done that. But yeah, I think it's the best in the league. I guess I'm biased because I sit in the middle of it,
Hmm.
for 8 months a year. But
Oh yeah, it's
you
definitely an
know,
experience. It's definitely
oh, it's off the
definitely set up
charts,
an
right?
experience, especially in T-Mobile Arena.
Yeah,
They,
exactly.
they do a really
Yeah.
good job.
Yeah, there's nothing like it. And again, this isn't to take anything away from other cities and what they do, but it's pretty awesome what they do at the Fortress.
So how was it doing the Stanley Cup Finals the first year and then what was it 2 years ago? How was that
Yeah,
experience?
well, I'll tell you, the only weird thing about it, Joey, was and I don't really miss much about my old job. As
Yeah.
I say, I enjoyed it, but thought it was kind of time to make a move if I could. The only weird thing is in radio, you go as far as the team goes. Okay. In
Mm.
television, just the way the broadcast rights are, right, wrong, or indifferent, you only do the local TV for the first round. So after the first round, Shane and I were just kind of, he does some national stuff, so he stays a little bit busier than I do. Look, the experience of being on that ride was unbelievable. Especially,
Mhm.
year one was, just who would have ever thought that, right? And then them winning it in year six. But from a broadcast standpoint, Shane and I didn't have much to do. We just kind of,
Really?
we
Yeah.
just, I remember I traveled a bit in the second round against Edmonton. I
Hmm.
think I went to game six of the Dallas series, the conference final when they clinched the series in Dallas. And then we all went to games, the two games they played in Florida in the Cup final. And there's a funny story. We have a good friend that is very generous. He has a suite at T-Mobile Arena. As the playoffs were going on in the Cup run of 23, Shane and I were, we just, I don't know, we didn't want to just kind of go up in the press box and sit. We like, can we make it a little more enjoyable? So
Hmm.
our friend said, "Hey, come in the suite anytime you want, and free food and free beverages." And
Hmm.
so we're not the dumbest guys on earth. So we ended up, when they won the cup that night, we were in our friend's suite. And then when they raised a banner that October, I think it was an
Hmm.
ESPN game or something, so we weren't doing it. We were in his suite again. So
Hmm.
yeah, but it's I say this, Joey. Look, it's unbelievable. I know
Yeah.
people that have been, I've been at it a long time, but there's people that have done it much longer than me, and they've never been around the team that's won it.
Mhm.
I was lucky enough to be around the Bruins when they won it in 2011, and now the Golden Knights in 2023. So that's an unbelievable experience, and just to the parade in Boston, the parade down the Strip in Vegas. I'm one that hopes, I probably am completely out to lunch on this. My hope is that the league, and it's a little scary. I'm sure you pay attention to the stuff. The NBA just went to a deal where there's no local television at all in the playoffs, and that sucks.
Wow.
That's tough. We only do the first round of the NHL. I'm hoping the league's got enough vision to go the other way. Streaming options now, and the Golden Knight, we have Nighttime Plus. Maybe you do something. It's a streaming option only for your local fans, as the playoffs continue. I don't hold out a lot of hope that the league is going to think that way,
Hmm.
but that's okay. I just think that people want their and it's not unique to what we do. I think in any city, they get used to their announcers, right? They flip on their TV. We do roughly 70 games because we lose 12 or 13 to the national broadcast during the season. But people want it would be the same in Boston. It would be the same in Dallas. It would be the same in Colorado. People want their broadcasters.
Hmm.
Whether the league will ever do that, I'm not overly optimistic that they'll be that bold, but who knows?
Yeah, maybe in the future.
Yeah, who knows? But long answer to a short question. You always would rather be doing it, but I can also stand around and do nothing with the best, the best of
Yeah,
them too, which is kind of what I did. So,
definitely. Yeah.
and you go to a Golden Knights game, and you might be sitting with people you have nothing in common with in life, but you love the Golden Knights, and I think that's what's great about sports in general, that it brings people together. It brings people kind of with a common, they love that team, they want the team to do well. And when they do well, and I think that's sometimes what happens when they don't do well. People, I don't know if they take it personally, they just get really disappointed because
Mm.
they put their time and their money and their energy into it. They're invested. They're invested in a lot of different levels. So, but fortunately, as I say, over the 8 years, it's been far more good than not so good, right? Especially for a team that, came out of nowhere there 8 years ago.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful thing. I feel like sports is one of the constants that we still have. Like as much as things change in the world, it's just that always seems to just be going like this. It never
Yeah,
changes.
I agree with that. That's what I mean, Joe. I think that Look, I'll just speak to my former job in Boston. The city of Boston went on a run where the Red Sox, they won it what, four times after not winning for 86 years. They won the World Series four times. The Celtics won in '08, then they won last year. The Patriots ran off six Super Bowls. And the Bruins had a Stanley Cup in there too. So I can't do the rough math. There's like 12 or 13 championships in a 21, 22 year period. That's a lot of parades, and a
Mm.
lot of celebrations. I think from the Golden Knights standpoint, the fact that they had 250,000 people on the strip, we were lucky enough to be in that parade and on one of the buses, and to have people standing 20 and 25 deep in front of the Bellagio and in front of Caesars and going down by the Cosmo, it's crazy, absolutely nuts that you'd never think that would be possible, but it is. And I agree. It's, the sports piece of it that, especially today, that has the ability to bring people, even if it's only for 3 hours on a Saturday night, right?
Mhm.
At least it's those 3 hours that people can enjoy it.
So what other sports have you covered in your career? You've done, I think, baseball, football. How does that differ from doing hockey?
Yeah, it is. It's different significantly. Like I did some when I was in college, I did baseball. I also did some Cape Cod Baseball League, which is out east here, out in the Northeast. The Cape Cod Baseball League it's been going on forever on Cape Cod, obviously, but
Hmm.
some of the best college baseball players in the country, and they'll come up and play in the summer here. So I did a package of games there one summer. My hometown team used to be the Pawtucket Red Sox. They were the Boston Red Sox AAA team, but they moved to Worcester, Massachusetts a few years ago, which hurts my soul. But I did some of their games, and I did some football in college too. When I was at BU, when they used to have a football and baseball team. Now they're both gone, but they are much different. Baseball, it's slow, and
Yeah.
it can be a long day or a long night, I guess. Football, not so much. I enjoyed doing football probably more. The limited amount I did with baseball, I enjoyed it well enough, but I said earlier, I like having the summers to kind of
Hmm.
decompress. When I'm back here in Rhode Island, I'll have the Red Sox on just to have on TV in the background.
Hmm.
Well, that's one thing, but it's a lot different to actually go in and work 162 baseball games. I don't like it that much. So
Yeah, that's a lot.
it's double what we do in hockey. It's
Hmm.
literally double. I think the other thing in baseball, and I just watching it from afar, if your team is not good and they're out of it basically by the end of April, you've still got 5 months to go.
Hmm.
That's how do you stay engaged? How do you keep your audience engaged?
Hmm.
And I guess I've been spoiled to a degree that the Golden Knights have been good all 8 years I've been there, and the Bruins, especially the last probably decade, little decade plus that I was there, they were good. But if you have a team that's bad, that can be a long season. And as I say in baseball, holy smokes,
Hmm.
you could have 120 games left and your team is 21 games out of a playoff spot. I enjoy it well enough, and I've dabbled in it in the past, but to have it be my main job, I was kind of like, yeah, I didn't have an overwhelming desire to do that.
How was doing the Super Bowl in 2004?
Well, I covered, you know what I did, you know what, Joe? It wasn't, I don't want to miss it. I covered, so that was a lockout year in the NHL. So in 04, 05, they didn't play a whole season because of a labor dispute. So that actually opened the door for me to do a lot of different things. I didn't call the Super Bowl, but I covered the Patriots' run to winning. I think it was their third one. Covered the broadcast of the parade, did, special features as they were going through the playoffs. That was awesome. Same thing with the Red Sox. The Red Sox won the World Series October of 2004. That was when the NHL was supposed to start their season, but they never did play that season. So
Hmm.
the Red Sox won it in '04. The Patriots won that Super Bowl. At the time, they're third in February of '05. So I got to kind of be around, same thing. So the Red Sox parade, the Red Sox ring ceremony at Fenway Park that next April of '05. I was able to call pre-Boston marathons, which was
Hmm.
it was different. You were on the back of a flatbed truck for 26 miles
Wow.
watching these runners come at you. We had a main host, Gil Santos, who sadly passed a few years ago as a legendary Patriots announcer. And
Hmm.
Gil was the main voice for our marathon coverage on WBZ radio at the time in Boston. And he would say, let's send it out to Dave. He's with the elite men. And people would listen along the marathon route, where are the runners? Because they would want to know when they were going to be getting to their neighborhood. So
Hmm.
that was pretty cool because it was totally out of the box. I mean, I didn't know much. Who knows anything about marathon runners? But that was cool too. The lockout stunk for a whole host of reasons, but the ability to get into some other things, The radio station at the time, I always thought they used me a little bit like a utility infielder, little third, play a little second, pinch hit, pinch run.
Hmm.
But to be able to do those different things was a great experience.
What do you think was the craziest game you've had the pleasure of announcing,
Oh man, craziest.
for better
Yeah,
or
a
for
couple of
worse?
yeah. Well, how about I'll take you on both ends of the spectrum.
Yeah.
The worst would be in 2010, the Bruins were in the playoffs in the second round against the Philadelphia Flyers, and they built a 3-0 lead in the series and lost the series in 7 games. They were up 3 games to none. They lost game 4 in overtime in Philadelphia. Came back home, lost game 5, went back to Philly, lost game 6. Came back to Boston for game 7. They were up 3-0 in the first period of the seventh game, the Bruins were. So you're thinking,
Hmm.
okay, now they'll, and they lost the game 4-3 and lost the series. So that would have been flip a coin between that and the Bruins lost the Stanley Cup final to Chicago in 2013 in game 6. And they had a 2-1 lead. The Bruins had a 2-1 lead with about 3 minutes left. And the Hawks scored 2 goals in 17 seconds to win the game and win the Stanley Cup in Boston. So
Wow.
that was a kick in the can. And I'd say some of the craziest, probably from a winning standpoint, would be that Bruins team in 2013. They were down in game 7. Kind of sometimes everything kind of comes around. They were down 4-1 in the third period of game 7 against Toronto in the first round, and with about 12 and a half minutes left, and made a huge comeback, tied the game, and then won the game in overtime. So that would probably be the most just shocking that they actually won the game because everyone figured they were toast, So I do think in a bigger picture, that's what I like about what I do the most is that you never really know how it's going to turn out. You can go into a game and we all prepare and do our thing, but you don't really know. That's what I really like about it is the unknown and kind of the flying by the seat of your pants a little bit. I mean, you can usually have a pretty good educated guess as to how it might go, but those scenarios I just laid out,
Hmm.
those are pretty unique. Where you come back huge and teams come back from big deficits in series or in a seventh game of a series. The run-of-the-mill 3-2 win in February or 5-4 loss in March, those kind of tend to, over the course of a long time, blend in. But it's those eye-opening, like, holy smokes, how did they win or how did they lose that game that tend to stick with you for a long time.
Hmm. How has it been watching the Golden Knights evolve as a team?
It's been great. I think that, look, a full credit to everybody in the hockey operations department, George McPhee and Kelly McCrimmon, and they did a heck of a job from the beginning, obviously. That expansion team, they caught something there early, right? They, obviously for horrific reasons, the shootings on 1 October and
Hmm.
it was right before the first game. And
Hmm.
I think people were kind of looking back to our earlier discussion, Joey, about something to grab onto that was positive, and the team gave them that. They went 8-1, I think, in their first 9 games, if I remember right. Yeah, they just kind of got off to a heck of a start, and they never really slowed down. Shane and I used to joke around off television, not on the air, about, well, all right, this is great, but where are they going to be at Thanksgiving, and where
Hmm.
are they going to be at Christmas and where are they going to be at the trade deadline? And we kind of kept running out of benchmarks. I think that team, they put it all into fast forward by about 10 years. The original plan was they had a lot of guys on expiring contracts. I think they figured, hey, we're not going to be very good. We'll trade these guys at the trade deadline. We'll get some draft picks and we'll accrue picks and build that way. Well, that plan was thrown out the window because they won the division. They had one of the best records in the league, and that changed everything. So it's been unbelievable to see it. I do think they did make some sort of a determination, though, as great as that first year was. If you kind of zoomed out, and you looked at it from 10,000 feet, I think they realized they had to get better. Hence, the trade for Mark Stone and
Hmm.
the trade to get Max Pacioretty, and a few years later, the trade to get Alec Martinez and sign Alex Pietrangelo as a free agent and trade for Jack Eichel. All those things. There's all different ways to do it, Joey. There used to be in the NHL this school of thought that you built your team drafting and developing your own talent. The New Jersey Devils probably did it better than anybody for a long, long time. I do think that's changed to a degree.
Hmm.
And I think the Golden Knights kind of broke that mold. Like even after that, they're very aggressive. As we sit here now, they just worked out a sign and trade deal for Mitch Marner. Most people would say it's probably one of the top 10 players in the NHL. So they've been very aggressive in terms of going after it. And I like that. They weren't going to sit and wait for draft picks to develop over a course of 3, 4 years. I think they felt if they could, Eric Branstrom was one of their first round picks in their first draft. That turned into Mark Stone. Alex Tuck eventually turned into Jack Eichel. Part of the deal. You know what I mean? So it's been impressive to see how they've gone about it. They've had incredible success. These last 2 years, the regular season has been really good. The playoffs have kind of been a bummer. And I think hence the phrase I've kind of used over the last little while is I felt they needed some sort of a DNA change. They couldn't just run it back. The goals have dried up the last 2 years as the playoffs have gone on. Hence some of these moves. The biggest being getting Marner and signing him long term because something had to change. They couldn't, when you kind of go out the way they did the last couple of years in the Dallas series 2 seasons ago and then Edmonton this past year, you had to kind of tweak it, and they made a significant tweak in adding somebody of Marner's caliber.
We're on a budget, so I only got 5 minutes left on this meeting. So I'll just wrap it
We're
up.
all out of budget.
And I'll just say, you've been with the Golden Knights for almost a whole decade now. Is there anything in the future that you're planning on doing, or are you just going to stick with them?
Yeah, I mean, to me, Joey, it's, I've been doing this a long time and I hope to do it for a good many years. I don't know where else I would go, to be honest. I mean,
Mm,
our quality of life in Vegas is through the roof. And to me, a lot of it just comes down to that personally and professionally, and the ease with which you can kind of get around. I go 5 minutes to our practice rink in Summerlin, 20 minutes to the strip. The weather's great. People love the team. I
mhm.
just don't know where else I would, at this stage of the game, where else I would kind of go. Honestly, would I like to dabble in some of the national stuff a bit more? Sure. Anybody would. But short of that, from a regional job, to be able to do this and be there from the beginning, I think that's one of the things that Shane and I talk about a lot is we're the first ones on television in Vegas to do it, right? When we're done, somebody else will come in, but we will have been the first ones. So
Mhm.
that that means a lot to us. I don't have a time frame on it. Sometimes I think about it and I'm like, well, what the heck else would I do?
Mhm.
Not qualified to do much else. So I'll do this for a while longer, hopefully, and hopefully, they'll have a lot of success here. They're set up to, I think, to be good here for many years to come, and hopefully, I can be along for the ride.
Perfect. Well, I think you've made your mark for sure.
Oh, hopefully, Joey. Yeah, it's fun. It's people seem to enjoy what we do, which is great. I think the team's been good. That always helps. I never lose sight of that fact. Shane and I kind of decided from the beginning, this is a show, right? It should be, not that I know we're kind of running short, Joe. I just think I always keep this in mind. People come home and they watch our games and they're looking for a release from their normal life, right? Their jobs, come home, they want to have a beverage, they want to sit, kick their feet up and enjoy themselves. And I think we can help them do that, and that's what we've tried to do now for the last 8 years.
Perfect. All right. Well, appreciate you coming on.
You bet, Joey. It's a pleasure.